A struggling waitress asks the billionaire CEO, "Sir, why is my mother's name tattooed on your arm?" Chapter 1, The Question That Changed Everything. The evening rush at Charlie's diner was in full swing. Plates clattered, voices buzzed, and the scent of sizzling burgers filled the air. Sarah Evans wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead as she carried a heavy tray of orders to a table near the window. She had been working double shifts for weeks, trying to scrape together enough money to cover her mother's medical bills. The stress of overdue notices and unpaid rent weighed on her like a boulder. At the far end of the diner, a man sat alone in a booth, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his wristwatch gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The contrast between him and the regular customers was striking. When Sarah walked over to take his order, her breath caught in her throat. As he rolled up his sleeve to check his watch, she saw it, her mother's name, Margaret Evans, tattooed on his forearm. Her heart pounded. "Excuse me, sir," she blurted out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why is my mother's name tattooed on your arm?" The man froze. Slowly, he looked up, his deep-set eyes filled with something she couldn't quite place, recognition, maybe even pain. "Your mother," he said softly, "is Margaret Evans?" Sarah nodded, confusion swirling in her mind. The man exhaled deeply. Then, he smiled, a small, almost wistful smile. "Let me tell you a story." Chapter 2, A Debt That Could Never Be Repaid. 30 years ago, the man began, I was a scared, hungry kid on the streets of this city. My parents had abandoned me, and I had nothing, no home, no future. I was stealing scraps from garbage cans just to survive. One night, I tried to steal from this very diner. I thought I could grab a few dollars from the register and run before anyone noticed. But someone did notice, your mother. Sarah's eyes widened in shock. She caught me, he continued, but instead of calling the police, she did something I never expected, she fed me. She gave me a warm meal, sat me down, and told me that no one was beyond saving. She said, "Son, the world is cruel, but that doesn't mean you have to be. If you ever get the chance to change someone's life, promise me you will." His voice thickened with emotion. That was the first time in years anyone had shown me kindness. I promised her that night, if I ever made something of myself, I'd repay that kindness 100 times over. Sarah's throat tightened. The man smiled sadly and rolled up his sleeve further. The day I made my first million, I got this tattoo. Not just as a reminder of the woman who saved my life, but as a vow, to live by her words. Chapter 3, An Unbelievable Offer. Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped her notepad. I can't believe this. My mom never told me any of this. The man nodded. She wouldn't. That's just the kind of person she was. He leaned forward, his expression sincere. How is she? Sarah looked down, blinking rapidly. She's sick. Medical bills are piling up, and her voice cracked. I don't know how much longer I can keep up. For a long moment, the man said nothing. Then, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a checkbook, and started writing. Sarah gasped. Wait, what are you doing? He tore the check from the book and placed it gently in her hand. I owe her my life. Consider this a small token of gratitude. She glanced at the check and nearly collapsed, $500,000. I can't accept this, she stammered, tears spilling down her cheeks. He shook his head. Yes, you can. And you will. Your mother saved me when no one else would. This is the least I can do. Sarah sobbed, clutching the check to her chest. I don't know how to thank you. He smiled. Just promise me one thing, if you ever get the chance to change someone's life, you will. She nodded fiercely, the weight of the moment sinking into her soul. Chapter 4, Full Circle. A week later, Sarah sat beside her mother's hospital bed, holding her frail hand. The stress of bills and debt had lifted, replaced with hope. "Mom," she whispered, "I met someone who says you once saved his life." Margaret Evans smiled weakly, her tired eyes twinkling. "Oh, honey," she murmured, "that's the only thing in life that really matters. Helping when you can." Sarah squeezed her mother's hand, a new determination burning inside her. Because kindness had saved a life once. And now, it had come back full circle. Epilogue, The Ripple Effect. Years later, Sarah sat in a bustling cafe, sipping coffee as she watched the world go by. Across from her sat a young woman, teary-eyed, clutching a small check Sarah had just handed her. "I don't know how to thank you," the girl whispered. Sarah smiled, hearing her mother's voice in her mind. "Just promise me one thing, if you ever get the chance to change someone's life, you will."